Hi YouTube, this video is long overdue and it teaches you how to play on 4 as both crew and imp, so let's have a look. Before you read this, keep in mind that this is designed for the AUC competitive scene and it was written in approximately August. So if the rules change, this guide may become inaccurate. These include: you must scan as your last task, you're allowed to pre-plan on 4 or below, there's a game timer of 20 minutes currently, and some rules related to stacking. But let's be honest, stacking is never punished. This was made by Jasper primarily, and then I was the editor. So before you actually begin your pre-plan in the meeting on 4, here are some preconditions. Generally, you want 2 people who are identified as hard clears. Those 2 hard clears should lead the meeting and define the pre-plan. If you are talking and you are not a hard clear, please stop talking. The hard clears may even take steps such as turning down your volume on the client side. You should ideally know who has buttons left. There is a section of this guide that talks about what to do if you have no buttons left, but that is not a preferable scenario, of course, for crew. It's great for imps. You should know what the remaining tasks are of each player. It's hard to do this if comms are off, but if comms are on, you can simply click the map button and talk about which tasks and where they are for each player. That allows you to have a predetermined task route, and we'll get into what are some ideas for designing that task route. So some different types of pre-plans, and there are many, some of which are common and popular, and some of which are quite rare and exotic. So the first that we'll go over is the scan pre-plan. So usually this happens if a sus player has medbay scan and they can be cleared as a result. It's not as useful if you already are a hard clear, because then the scan is quite redundant. So the 2 hard clears will follow the person with scan and let them do all their tasks, so their last task will be scan. The other sus player is either caged or put on cams, depending on where the tasks are. You shouldn't cage or you shouldn't put them on cameras actually if you're going to go into specimen. In that case, you probably want them in the lights cage. You don't really need the hard clears to do their own tasks. You should ideally just follow the scanner and let them do all their tasks so that they can eventually scan, and then you can button out the sus person. That's a very fast pre-plan that can end the game quickly. So consider this if your game timer is low. You could also take the risk and just vote out one of the sus players if you feel confident. A different pre-plan is specifically just a generic one to do with lights. So you pick a sus player and you put them in the cage. They're expected to fix lights immediately since they're in the cage. If on the other hand reactor is called, they should go to the left reactor. If you don't see 1 out of 2, then they're probably coming to try to kill you. And you can just vote them out once you fix reactor. So the other 3 players stack together. They must stack together. If they split up, it's a failed pre-plan. And they do their tasks. This is especially important if lights get called. Once those 3 players have finished all their claim tasks, if the game doesn't end, then it's solved, assuming the ghosts do their tasks. If you're a ghost and not doing your task, you should probably be ranked blocked, because you are very bad at the game. There's no excuse on that one. If you're following people around as a ghost and you still have tasks left, stop doing that. I'm specifically looking at you, Santo. So the 2 hard clears must stick together. Ideally, those 3 players should be sticking together, including the least sus person. You should be occasionally checking admin to make sure that the cage player is not moving around the map. Cams pre-plan. This is putting the sus player on cams because you can see the cams light, which guarantees they're still on cameras. They should be checking every few seconds, getting off cameras to know if lights are called. If they don't know to do that themselves, then the clear players can instruct them to do that, given this is a slightly more rare pre-plan. The sus player is expected to fix lights in left reactor, and again the 3 players stack and the 2 hard clears must stick together. That's all default. So yeah, as I mentioned, the benefit is you can see the cams light, the exceptions being deep in labs and in speci, of course. So this cams pre-plan is less effective if you must go to specimen. In that case, you should probably consider just lights cage pre-plan. So the admin pre-plan, this is very rare. I would even consider it exotic. So if the two hard clears have finished all their tasks, they can in theory stay on admin. Then you can see where the other two players are at all times. So the two susses can just go in separate areas and finish all their tasks. If they're in the same area, it's likely that one of the sus players is killing the other sus player. And then you should run to that area of the map and look for the body. And the sus players can have a predetermined task route. And if they're going off that route, you can just vote out the person who deviated from the path. And you should be checking vitals occasionally, because that's another way to determine if a kill has happened. Then you can run to where they were last seen on admin. So now we're going to get to imposter and some counter strategies, counterplay for the imps. Blackout was made, most recognizable by Zach. This is calling lights immediately when the round starts, and that makes it hard for the crew to stack. The goal here is isolate a player and get 2 kills, or stall to keep lights off by battling lights. This is very effective if timer is low. And sometimes you can kill a hard clear and force 3. That's another win con. So you should try to stack and move towards the button first and gather the troops, and then you shuffle step over to lights, or if you're competent, you could even slightly run faster than true shutter step. The sus player should be the one to fix the lights, hopefully before kill cooldown is ready. And if the 2 hard clears can stack and the sus player fixes lights, it's hard for the imp to win here. It's kind of a YOLO strategy, or sort of a Hail Mary. React on 4 forces people to split up, so you have to look at 1/2. That's knowing that a player is holding down reactor. This starts off by being a sus person in cage, and they're supposed to fix left reactor, so if you see the 1/2, they're doing the correct thing. If they're not, they're probably trying to get a kill. So if you're in Speci, you should leave when there's about 40 seconds left on reactor. That's enough time to get out of Speci and split up and fix the reactor. You don't really need to wait for the sus person in specimen, because they can see the 1/2 on the reactor. If you see the sus person split off from the stack, that's a thing that imps could be trying to get counterplay with. So you stack as imposter, and the other sus person who's actually a crewmate got caged. Then you leave and hope to get 2 kills. You can either kill the caged person, or you can try to hope that the hard clears have split up and try to kill one of them. It works really well if you've got newer players who don't know to stack. And the correct thing for crew to do is run straight to the cage to check for that person being dead, and then they should button. And if lights are not getting fixed, they can run back to lights and fix it and then button. This is assuming that the sus person is not fixing lights. If a sabotage is called, they should again check the cage, fix the sabo, and button as we just said. Cage player could also be dead on the way to left reactor, so you have to check that too. Or you can just try to, go look for the cage player at the last person that you saw on admin if you happen to check that. There's another option for imp, is killing on a task to force a final 3. You can either kill the person who's on a task, or you can kill the people who are not on the task, because the task doer is not able to see who killed for certain tasks. So crew can have the 2 hard players stack when you're on a see-through task. Several tasks are see-through: reactor, canisters, water wheels, and so on, still allow you to see a bit of the map. Other tasks like download do not. They cover the whole screen. Also, crew can fake the task, like pretending to be on download and beta kill. That's something that Raka does, for example. Other crewmates who've played for quite a while often do this just naturally. Or you can do part of the task and press escape or click away from the task. That also cancels the task halfway. That's just an inferior version of faking the task, but it does guarantee that you'll be standing in the correct spot to do the task, which makes you look more crew. And again, you can do cams pre-plan as counterplay. Cool. Messing with lights, that is always a win con, because a superior imp can win the lights battle, which guarantees a timer win if you can do it well enough. with the exception of few tasks remaining that crew could speedrun their tasks. So it's really a race condition. This stops them being able to easily stack and doing tasks, and they often have to start a step. They might get an opportunistic kill if the crewmates give up on fixing lights. So then, if they fail the lights battle, they are forced to go complete their tasks. And if the time is low, they may not have a chance to do that. Ideally, only one crew is doing their task. That's a bit slower, but it does provide safety because you can always check that the imp is really on lights. So yeah, you should be battling the lights the whole time to force the imp to stay there. And then you can report the caged player's body by staying off lights with one player, because the imp could kill the person battling lights in the scenario where you only leave one person on lights. So you could keep that player on vitals to see when they died, or you can stay in the cage. Many other ways that you can play that scenario correctly. Leave that as an exercise for the reader. And some additional scenarios, if you're really curious. Playing without buttons. You might remember earlier we said that you should know who has buttons. Sometimes you've run out. In that case, you need to just run as a 3 stack and do all your tasks. You could have the imp stall by faking a task, pretending to be a crewmate, and calling reactor or other sabotages like lights. Ideally, comms is a last resort because that does allow 2 shots. So you should be probably thinking about reactor or lights. And they'll probably go for 2 kills if you don't stack correctly. Without pre-plan is pretty bad. This usually happens if you've shot on 5. So the objective for the crew now is to figure out how to get another meeting. And you should stack. By default, you should just know this. So the 2 hard clears should know automatically to stack, and then the sus person should go fix lights or go on cams. And then that reduces the chance of the imp getting 2 kills. And then fixing sabos and going in button is the correct thing to do. You should not be doing any tasks. If you run off and do tasks on 4 without a pre-plan, you'll probably lose, because that's equivalent to playing on 4 with no pre-plan and splitting up, which is really, really bad. Probably result in a double kill and loss of game. So if you found this video valuable, please send me in a DM or Jasper what you would rate it out of 10. You know, we aim to get at least 7 or 8. And if it's higher, fantastic. If it's lower, please tell us what you would want improved. Was it easy to understand? Was it too basic for you? Was it too advanced for you? In which case, we can try to tailor the content or split it up into simpler or more advanced content for the real pros. If you're interested in seeing additional educational content, please let us know what in particular you'd like to understand, or what advanced topics you'd want to cover in the case that this is too easy. So some example topics could be figuring out pairs correctly, voting analysis like claiming votes and when that's a good idea, setting up double or triple kills for imposters. Often I hear people complaining about dying on 10, dying first. Generally avoid dying first by going electrical or vitals. Those are the most common places that people will stack on 10. Don't get stack killed though. Try to split up slightly within vitals and elec. How to avoid messing up if you're in final 3 or final 4, because there's a crit vote, especially if time is low. If you mess up critical vote, people will flame you for the most part. And yeah, generally how to avoid getting shot as a crewmate. That's the end of the presentation, and I hope we'll get to see you play more Ranked Among Us, because I really love this community and hope it still has a chance of growing. Take care.